So given this wonderful award is about free speech, let me talk about some free speech here. In 1987, President Reagan vetoed legislation seeking to turn the Fairness Doctrine into a federal statute. Members of Congress in both parties, for whatever reasons, wanted to ensure that it was installed not just from a regulatory basis, but a statutory basis. And much like Andrew Breitbart, here's what Reagan said when he vetoed it. This type of content-based regulation by the federal government is antagonistic to the freedom of expression guaranteed by the First Amendment. Remember, there wasn't broad talk radio then. They outnumbered us 1,000 to 1. He said, in any other medium besides broadcasting, such federal policing of editorial judgment or journalists would be unthinkable. He said, the bill simply cannot be reconciled with the freedom of speech and press secured by the Constitution. You will never hear words like that cross Barack Obama's lips. Reagan said the framers of the First Amendment, confident the public debate would be free and healthier without the kind of interference represented by the Fairness Doctrine, chose to forbid such regulations in the clearest terms. History has shown, he said, that the dangers of an overly timid or biased press cannot be averted through bureaucratic regulation, but only through the freedom and competition that the First Amendment sought to guarantee. And shortly after he vetoed that bill, his FCC commissioners voted unanimously to kill the Fairness Doctrine as a regulation. Ronald Reagan started talk radio. Ronald Reagan started all these platforms. It was his spirit that really created the internet and so forth, not Al Gore. Yeah. Now, up until last week, the Obama administration, through its FCC commissioners, including filet mignon, had taken a different approach. They were planning on sending government monitors into newsrooms at radio and TV stations, newspapers, and even internet news outlets like yours. And they wanted to determine how these organizations were gathering news and making editorial judgments. They were using this, folks, as a pretext. As a pretext. They wanted to identify and understand the critical information needs of the American public, I'm quoting, with special emphasis on vulnerable and disadvantaged populations. I think that means we conservatives, but I'm not sure. This is what we call fascism. They were caught red-handed, and I mean red-handed this time, but they never give up. And we shouldn't turn a blind eye to this. This shows you what they're capable of. You see, so consumed with usurping our free speech rights, along with the rest of the Bill of Rights, is this administration, that it unleashed the IRSS on Tea Party and conservative groups and individuals with whom it disagreed in order to stifle free political speech in the lead-up to the 2012 presidential election. And that's what the IRSS scandal is all about, suppressing organized opposition to Obama's re-election. And it worked. Apparently the only one who didn't know about it was Obama, the main beneficiary of the whole scandal. And now he poses as Helen Keller when these scandals erupt. Nothing against Helen Keller, even though she was a leftist too. Any media here? Just saying hello. The fact is, Obama and his party were furious with the Supreme Court's decision in Citizens United versus the FEC. How dare groups participate in the election process with advocacy ads other than big labor and left-wing groups? Obama condemned this decision at his Castro-like State of the Union speech. The lovely Chuck Schumer introduced legislation to, in essence, gut the court's decision and intimidate any business or group that dared to participate in the political process against the Democrats. Carl Levin, among others, demanded investigations. He even demanded prosecutions before investigation of these businesses and these groups. There were Senate hearings, much like the old Soviet-style hearings. Multiple letters, public declarations demanding that the IRSS act against these groups. An act the IRSS did. And now the IRSS is planning on issuing a regulation that actually codifies its own corruption, making it impossible for 501c4 taxpayer, tax groups, conservative groups to do what they've always done, including promote voter registration and issue advocacy. And yesterday we saw the latest spectacle. Yet again, Lois Lerner asserting the Fifth Amendment to protect herself from self-incrimination. And yet Elijah Cummings, doing the bidding of the White House and his party, sought to turn the hearings into a circus. But don't worry, they have nothing at all to hide. In the meantime, the FBI, under Eric Holder, has not interviewed a single victim. And of course, Holder has no intention of appointing a special prosecutor so we can get to the bottom of the scandal, because they are the bottom of this scandal. The symptoms of tyranny, such as these brazen attacks on free speech, have threatened republics throughout time. In 1829, Supreme Court Justice Joseph Story wrote, "Governments are not always overthrown by direct and open assaults. They are not always battered down by the arms of conquerors or the successful daring of usurpers. There's often concealed the dry rot, which eats into the vitals when all is fair and stately on the outside. And to republics, this has been the more common fatal disease. The continued drippings of corruption may wear away the solid rock when the tempest has failed to overturn it." In 1838, Abraham Lincoln declared, "At what point is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, if it ever reach us, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide." So I'll cut to the chase. Barack Obama is the most lawless, arrogant, ideologically radical, and incompetent president in modern American history. What do you mean, Mr. President? What do you mean, Mr. President, when you say repeatedly that if Congress doesn't act, you will? If Congress doesn't act and you do, that's an impeachable offense. Haven't you heard of separation of powers? Are you aware of Article 1 in the Constitution? And what do you mean when you say you want to fundamentally transform America? Where does the Constitution grant you such power? Let me suggest, if you love your country, you don't want to fundamentally transform it. This president and his administration have unconstitutionally rewritten our immigration laws, our financial laws, Obamacare, workfare, the Clean Air Act, without the benefit of congressional action, and they've done it repeatedly. Obama has appointed cronies to high office without the advice and consent of the Senate, declaring the Senate in recess when it was not and when he has no such power. He has punished or closed down certain disfavored industries, subsidized favored corporations to the tune of tens of billions of dollars, and effectively nationalized others. Obama not only disregards the First Amendment, but the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Ninth Amendment, and the 10th Amendment. We call those the Bill of Rights. Not the Bill of Needs or the Bill of Wants. Those are our rights. John Locke, Charles de Montesquieu, many of the philosophers of the European Enlightenment, and the founders, knew that the history of organized government is mostly a history of relative few and perfidious men co-opting, coercing, and eventually repressing the many through the centralization and consolidation of authority. And so it is that no society is guaranteed perpetual existence. But I believe that the American people are not ready for servitude. For if this is our destiny and the destiny of our children, I cannot conceive that any people will successfully resist it for long. This generation of Americans will not condemn future generations to centuries of misery and darkness. We will not allow this nation to fail. This is what I believe animated and motivated our dear friend Andrew Breitbart. He was a happy warrior, and he could smile when he kicked you in the you-know-whats. And he's deeply missed. And he wasn't just a warrior. He was a smart guy. He was a strategist. He knew how to make the case. He knew how to relate to people. He believed in the American people. And he refused to accept the tyranny of the left. He'd go where they were. He'd march where they marched. He'd put up his signs when they put up their signs. He got in their face. Upon taking the oath of office on January 20, 1981, in his first inaugural address, President Reagan told the American people, if we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleashed the energy of individual genius, that of man, to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual, he said, have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we've never been unwilling to pay that price. It is no coincidence that our present troubles parallel and are proportionate to the intervention and intrusion in our lives that result from unnecessary and excessive growth of government. It is time for us to realize that we are too great a nation to limit ourselves to small dreams. We're not, as some would have us believe, doomed to an inevitable decline. I do not believe, he said, in a fate that will fall on us no matter what we do. But he also said, I do believe in a fate that will fall on us if we do nothing. And I know Andrew Breitbart would agree with that. These are perilous times. And now more than ever, we conservatives must embrace and advance our principles. We must speak out, we must act, and time is of the essence. And I want to thank these tremendous patriots up here for all that they are doing, all that they've done, and all that they're going to do. And I want to thank each and every one of you who in your own way, in your own lives, are doing the same thing. This is an enormous honor. It's an honor I don't deserve, but I greatly appreciate it. God bless you, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. That was a great speech by one of the great conservative leaders of our time. Andrew Breitbart would be proud. Now, I